Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy. You're reading with Jimmy. We're reading William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Hopefully, you're still with me. It's exciting, isn't it? Act 3, Scene 1. We left off the play's The Thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king, where Hamlet decided that he's going to have the players do a play. He's going to rewrite some lines and try to find out if the ghost is a demon or really his dad that told him about what happened to him. This is Act 3, Scene 1. It's a room in the castle. Enter the king, the queen, Polonius, Ophelia, Rosencrantz, and Guildenstern. King says, "And can you by no drift of circumstance get from him why he puts on this confusion, grafting so harshly all the days of quiet with turbulent and dangerous lunacy?" So the king's asking, can you figure out what's going on with Hamlet, right? Rosencrantz, he does confess he feels distracted, but from what cause he will by no means speak. Guildenstern, nor do we find him forward to be sounded, but with crafty madness he keeps aloof, when we would bring him on some confession of his true state. By crafty madness. Keep that in mind. So is he mad? That's one of the questions you have to keep asking yourself. The queen says, "Did he receive you well?" Rosencrantz, most like a gentleman. Guildenstern, but with much forcing of his disposition. Rosencrantz, niggard of question, but of our demands, most free in his reply. Right? Niggard means urgently stingy. Stingy of questions, but of our demands, most free in his reply. So he didn't really ask questions, but he was very, very free in giving them the reply when they asked him stuff. Did you assay him? Assay means attempt. Did you attempt him to any pastime? The queen asks. Did you try to involve him in a game or something? Rosencrantz, Madam, it so fell out that certain players were already wrought on the way, and of these we told him. And there did seem in him a kind of joy to hear of it. And they are about the court, and I think they have already ordered this night to play before him. So there were the players that we saw when Hamlet got excited, right? Polonius, 'tis most true. And he beseeched me to entreat your majesties to hear and see the matter. King, with all my heart, and it doth much content me to hear him so inclined. Good gentlemen, give him a further edge, and drive his purpose unto these delights. Rosencrantz, we shall, my lord. They exit Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. King, sweet Gertrude, leave us too. For we have closely sent for Hamlet hither, that he, as were by accident, may have affront Ophelia. Her father and myself, lawful epistles. Epistles is the action of watching or catching a sign of something. So her father and myself, lawful essibles, will so bestow ourselves that seeing unseen, we may of their encounter frankly judge, and gather by him, as he has behaved, if it be the affliction of his love, or know that thus he suffers for. So they want to know if he's suffering because of Ophelia. So they're going to be watching Ophelia, and he's letting his wife know they'll be checking Hamlet's out. Queen, I shall obey you. And for your part, Ophelia, I do wish that your good beauties be the happy cause of Hamlet's wildness. So shall I hope your virtues will bring him to his wonted way again, to both your honors. So the queen is hoping that it is in fact Ophelia. Ophelia says, Madam, I wish it may. The queen leaves. Polonius. Ophelia, walk you here. Gracious, so please you, we will bestow ourselves, meaning we're going to hide ourselves, to Ophelia. Here, read this book, that show of such an exercise may color your loneliness. We are oft to blame in this. 'Tis too much proved that with devotion's visage and pious action we do sugar over the devil himself. So he's really blaming himself again for this thing. The king, an aside. Oh, it's too true. How smart a lash that speech doth give my conscience. What speech is that? The one that Polonius just said. We're going to go back in a second. The harlot's cheek, beautied with plastered art, is not more ugly to the thing that helps it than is my deed to my most painted word. Oh, heavy burden, burden. Oh, heavy burden. The king is speaking an aside to the audience, admitting that whatever deed this is, and we kind of know what the deed is if we believe the ghost, he's carrying this burden. So back up to Polonius' speech for a moment. Ophelia, read this book that shows that such an exercise may color your loneliness. We are often to blame in this. It's too much proof that with devotion's visage and pious action, we do sugar over the devil himself. In other words, we can cover up the devil with pious devotion. So being men of good intentions and telling Ophelia to stay away from Hamlet, he may have really caused Hamlet's quote-unquote madness. Polonius, I hear him coming. Let's withdraw, my lord. So the king and Polonius withdraw, but they don't leave. They're going to be watching this. Enter Hamlet. Okay, following? So here comes Hamlet. You'll see these exclamation points. This is one of the greatest pieces of writing ever written. So pay attention. We can go over it again. Hamlet comes in saying, now remember, the king and Polonius are watching from being somewhere, and Ophelia is in the distance reading, but she's there. Hamlet, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it's nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say that we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation, devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream, aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may we come? When we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must we give pause? Must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of the spy's love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes when he himself might be quietus make. With a bare bodkin? Who would fardels bear to grunt, sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills that we have than to fly to others that we know not of. The conscience does make us cowards of us all. Thus conscience makes us cowards of us all. And thus the native hue of resolution is sickled over with the pale cast of thought, and enterprise of great pith and moment. With this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. Sophnon, the fair Ophelia, nymph, in thy horizons be all my sins remember. I can't do that justice like in a Laurence Olivier, but I want you to reread that again, and I'm going to just point a few things out. He's thinking about suicide again. You see, this is all about death and how weary life can be, And remember, we talked about madness in the analysis of Act 2. We're going to talk about suicide because he's still thinking about this. That's what to be or not to be. That's the question. That's the existential question. So he's still suffering, throw off this mortal coil, etc. So he's talking about the things that we bear in life, bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong. Sometimes people injure you. The proud man's insolent or insulting language or treatment. Contumely, right? Those are words. Bodkin. What's a bodkin? A blunt. Which needle, which a large, make the bear bodkin who would fartles bear. Now, he puts a note down here of what that means, but we don't have to worry about that. It means a bundle. But a bodkin is a long, blunt needle. So Hamlet is he mad when he says this? Just because you think of suicide, are you mad? That's the question you want to ask yourself. In any case, it's a beautiful speech full of sound and fury, perhaps signifying nothing. That's another quote to remember. In any case, he goes and there he sees Ophelia, and he says, "In thy prayer be all my sins remembered." Ophelia says, "Good, my lord." See the dash here? That's him talking to Ophelia. And remember, does Ophelia hear Hamlet? If she did, so did the king and Polonius, who were listening also. There's a debate about it being a monologue or soliloquy, an act of speaking one's thoughts out loud. You notice here there is no aside, so this is not him talking to us. This is Hamlet just talking. And who's he talking to? Himself, perhaps? Perhaps, God, who knows? He's talking out loud. Because he is talking out loud, not to us, these other characters who are within earshot are hearing him. They heard this. That's very important to remember. Now, you can do your own analysis and figure out, well, Jimmy, I don't believe that they heard him. Well, you're entitled to that. And if you Google it, they're going to tell you some believe that they heard it and some believe they didn't. But if you look at the evidence, those characters, Polonius, Claudius, Ophelia, heard this speech. And that's important to remember. So she says, "Good, my lord, how does your honor for this many a day?" Hamlet, "I humbly thank you. Well, well, well." Ophelia, "My lord, I have remembrance of yours that I have long longed to redeliver, and I pray you now receive them. No, not I. I never gave you naught. Ophelia, my honors, lord, you know right well you did. And with them words so sweet, breath composed, as made the things more rich. Their perfume lost, take these again. For to the noble mind, rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. Isn't that the truth about giving? Rich gifts wax poor when the givers prove unkind. There, my lord. Are you honest, my lord? Are you fair? What means your lordship? That if you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no course to your beauty. Could beauty, my lord, have better commerce than with honesty? Remember what we were talking about before with some of the players and things like that? This is word fencing, right? If you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty. And she says, could beauty, my lord, have better commerce than with honesty? And Hamlet says, aye, truly, for the power of beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is to a bawd than the force of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. This was sometime a paradox, statement opposed to common sense, but now the time gives it proof. I did love you once. The power of beauty will soon transform honesty into a bawd, into what is a bawd, then the force of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. Indeed, my lord, you made me believe so. You should not have believed me, Hamlet said, for virtue cannot so inoculate your old stock, but we shall relish of it. I loved you not. Ophelia says, I was the more deceived. Hamlet says, get thee to a nunnery. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent honest, but yet I could accuse. Before we go on, once you read this really here, there's a couple of things got question marks on this guy's notes. It should be noted that in these speeches, Hamlet refers not to Ophelia personally, but to sex in general. I don't know if that's true. You can go back and reread this for yourself. I can reread it, but I'm not going to reread it. But I don't know if he's just talking about, quote, sex in general. Do you get that? He's talking to Ophelia here, right? He's talking to, in all these things here, he's talking to Ophelia. He's telling her, I never loved you, or I did love you once, I loved you not, right? He's vacillating, right? I did love you once, I loved you not, right? So be careful when you're reading these notes. He tells her, get thee to a nunnery, join this, join the sisters. Why would you be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent honest, but I could accuse me of such things that it were better that my mother had not borne me. Oh, I am very proud, I'm revengeful, I'm ambitious, with more offenses at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in, imagination to give them shape, or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do crawling between earth and heaven? We are errant knaves. Remember that phrase? All, believe none of us. Believe none of us. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Where's your father? At home, my lord. Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. Farewell. Ophelia aside. Oh, help him, you sweet heavens. Hamlet. If thou dost marry, I shall give thee plague for thy dowry. Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow, thou shalt not escape calumny. Get thee to a nunnery, go, farewell. Or if thou wilt needs marry a fool. For wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. Get thee to a nunnery, go, quickly, farewell. Aside, oh, heavenly powers, restore him. You see, Ophelia, he's just ranting on Ophelia. He's ranting on her, telling her to go to a nunnery. He's going to give her a plague for her dowry. A plague. In those days, 400 years ago, plague was, it still is, but in those days, they didn't have good medicine. Plague was serious stuff. Hamlet, I have heard your paintings too well enough. God has given you one face, and you make yourselves another. You jig, and you amble, and you lisp, and you nickname God's creatures, and you make your wantonness your ignorance. Go, too, I'll no more of it. It hath made me mad. I say, we will have no more marriages. Those that are married already, all but one, shall live. The rest shall keep as they are. To a nunnery, go. And he finally leaves. That's an important speech. I've heard your paintings too. In other words, he's looked at her paintings. You can read the note down here, and he's not really saying that, what he's doing, but he's heard her. God has given you a face, and you make yourselves another. You put makeup on, you jig, you dance, you amble, blah, 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 and he leaves. Ophelia says, oh, what a noble mind is here overthrown. The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword, the expectancy on rose of the fair state, the glass of fashion and the mold of form, the observed of all observers, quiet down. And I, of the ladies most deject and wretched, that sucked the honey of his music vows, I now see that noble and most sovereign reason, like sweet bells jangled out of tune and harsh, that unmatched form and feature of blown youth, blasted with ecstasy. Oh, woe is me, to have seen what I have seen, see what I see. She's really, after being talked to like that and having feelings for Hamlet, she's really, so the king and Polonius come back. Love! His affections do not that way tend, nor what we spoke, right? Though it lacked form a little, was not like madness. That didn't sound like madness. There's something in his soul over which his melancholy sits unbrewed. And I doubt that the hatch and the disclose will be some danger, which for to prevent, I have in quick determination thus set it down. He shall speed to England. For the demand of our neglected tribute, happily, the seas and countries different with variable objects shall expel. There's something settled matter in his heart, whereupon his brains still beating puts him thus, form fashion of himself. What do you think of it? What do you think on it? So he's basically going to send him to England. Change the scenery, right? So they have been listening all this time to Hamlet talk to Ophelia, and the king says, I've made a determination after hearing this. I'm sending him to England. Polonius, it shall do well, but yet do I believe that the origin and commencement of his grief sprung from neglected love. Polonius is still convinced it's because Ophelia was neglecting him because he told Ophelia to neglect him. How now, Ophelia? You need not tell us what Lord Hamlet said. We heard it all. You see, there it is. They heard it all. We heard it all. My lord, do as you please. But if you hold it fit after the play, let the Queen Mother all alone entreat him to show his grief. Let her be round with him, and I'll be placed, so you please, in the ear of all their conference. And if she finds him not, then to England send him, or confine him where your wisdom shall best think. It shall be so, says the king. Madness is in great ones must not unwatched go. So go. It shall be so. Madness in great ones must not unwatched go. So remember the rhyming I told you about in certain instances? If you remember Act 1, Scene 5, Hamlet says, there's never been a villain dwelling in all Denmark, but he's not an errant knave. That's why I call attention, we are all errant knaves. We're all errant knaves. So, there it is. You've been reading with Jimmy. This was Scene 2, right? This was, wasn't it? Let's go back. Act 3, Scene 1. And we heard Hamlet's famous to be, not to be speech. We also heard him talk to Ophelia and really, really make her feel terrible. And then we heard the king saying, well, it's obviously not because he loves Ophelia, but I'm sending him to England. And Polonius saying, well, I still think it's because of Ophelia's, didn't return affections, but whatever you say. But do me one favor, send him over to talk to his mother, and I'll be listening in. Okay? You've been reading with Jimmy. This was Scene 1 of Act 3. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you're sticking with me. You've read the first 2 acts. You've read the analysis and interpretations. And if you have a question, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Hope you're here for the next one. Oh, by the way, I did get one. I'm getting various emails, but one stood out in the last batch. One that says, as much as I like some of the other stories on Reading with Jimmy, I'm never going to read Hamlet. So I replied to this person and described the story because I told you this is hard reading. Let's face it. The words are not, it's 400 years ago. It's like unweaving a detective story. You're solving a puzzle, right? So I just told him the story in short. It's about a ghost. And how would you feel if your father died and your mother married your uncle and you felt really sad and your uncle reams you out for feeling sad, calls you, you're not a man, everybody dies. And you're feeling like this. And then you see this ghost and the ghost says, my uncle, my brother killed me and I want you to take revenge. What would you do? So, and then he said, well, it sounds like a pretty good story. And I said, well, good luck reading it. We exchanged a couple of emails. Thank you for reading.